Sometimes you wake up in the morning and your fears that it might be you that's gone mad, not them, are allayed. And this is such one of those mornings. Every morning the bar gets lower for insanity and madness. And today it's time to choose the heavyweight, weird weight, wacky weight champion of today's headlines. So many to choose from. Now, often when I do my top 5 axis of evil, or my top 5 axis of idiots, or my top 5 axis of oddballs, I tend to leave out the usual suspects, because if you want to get funny information about Trump and that kind of thing, go elsewhere. Clearly Trump is off his head, but I'm not going to include him. It's too obvious. I'm going to try and dig a little bit deeper. But this morning it was easy to choose the 3 wacky weight contenders for the championship of the world, and we shall decide at the end who is the winner. So, number 1 contender for wacky weight champion of the world this morning has got to be Melania Trump. Now, when I first saw this, I thought it was AI, actually. Or I thought I'd woken up and put on one of the Late Show satire spoofs, and they'd done a kind of, satire on Melania Trump. And I thought this can't be real. This can't be real. You may have seen the clip. If you haven't, please do try and see it. Melania Trump giving a lecture to the US military on the future of AI weaponry and AI warfare. Yes, that's right. Now, that in itself, we live in a wacky, crazy, insane, weird world. And these are the sort of things, I suppose, that happen every day. But sometimes there are things that happen, they're quite comforting in a way, because they do make you realise that it isn't you, it really is them. Melania standing in front of the hard-nosed military units of the US Army, tells them that the future is AI and that this is a time of great change in the military. She gives a few examples of that. She talks about AI bombers. AI bombers. And she also talks about that the AI technology will become an essential tool of all military corps. Now, when she says corps, she obviously doesn't realise that we don't pronounce the P in corps. We say military corps. And in bomber, we don't pronounce the B. We say bomber. This is understandable if you've just arrived. But after 25 years in America, you would have thought that she would understand the concept of the silent letters. Her delivery can only be described as something out of a Terminator movie, the first one probably. She's got to be at least oddball of the day. Got to be a contender for the title fight. But then I noticed an article written in the Daily Mail by Peter Hitchens. Peter Hitchens, as you know, is quite literally, and this is not arguable, this is not contentious, the world's biggest morally indignant buffoon. He is a man so pumped up with buffoonery and moral indignant that's been going on for 30, 40 years. He's been saying the same thing. That you almost expect him to explode, rather like that guy in the Monty Python film when John Cleese, do you remember, he's in the restaurant, he's getting bigger and bigger, he's eating so much, he's getting bigger and bigger, and John Cleese comes over and says, just, would you like a mint? It is only a wafer thin. He has the mint and he explodes. Well, Peter Hitchens is getting bigger and bigger. And I would urge anybody who wants to have a laugh to have a look at the wonderful impressions of Peter Hitchens as he increasingly goes nutty in old age, by a guy called, I think, Tony something, but I'll make a link to it. He's a very funny impressionist who likes to take on those kind of weird people like Tucker Carlson and Hitchens and various others who we're used to spouting nonsense. Now, Peter Hitchens has been predicting the end of the world, and more exactly, he's been predicting the end of Britain since 1990, really. So what is that? It's 35 years. And that's all he does. He famously wrote a book, I think, in about 1999, something like that, called The Abolition of Britain. Britain was over, Britain had failed, that kind of thing. And, he's a one-trick pony. I don't know why he has sort of so deteriorated into a kind of almost sort of teddy bear version of Norman Tebbit, but that just seems to be the way it goes. I mean, I know he's had a real rivalry with his late brother Christopher, whether or not that had something to do with it. And of course, he is I was going to say a devout Christian, but it's worse than that. He's a kind of an old school kind of Church of England guy, really. He sort of claims to be very religious, but not religious in the sense that it kind of he does anything other than pop into church occasionally and say a silent prayer. But he's always banging on about it. So why is he a contender? Well, he's a contender because his headline in the Daily Mail today was something like, why I woke up this morning and realised I was right to urge anybody who can leave Britain to do so immediately. Now, he's been going on about... I didn't read the article, by the way. I mean, what's the point? He's been banging on about this for quite some time. But it was this sense of urgency that he had in this article, certainly the opening bit that I kind of looked at. Almost a sort of call from the heart to the people of Britain. If you can get on that final ferry, get on it. Leave. He didn't say where we would go. We're not allowed to go to Europe. We can't get access to Australia and Canada and America. Only under very exceptional circumstances these days. So we're meant to leave. And there was a slight irony, isn't there? He wants us to become basically what he considers to be economic migrants elsewhere, whilst at the same time he's very in favour of preventing economic migrants here. But this is always the thing about Peter Hitchens. Nothing he says really is worthy of scrutiny. And he only really says 3 or 4 things. He doesn't like cannabis. He doesn't like e-bikes. He thinks that you should leave Britain immediately. If you can, he said, if you can. So I think he is a contender for today's wacky-weight champion of the world. And funnily enough, actually, I came across an article of his that he'd written in 1999 the other day. It was on some kind of pre-Substack forum thing. And he was basically saying the same thing then. I mean, it was the same theme. I think it was just after he'd written The Abolition of Britain. So for a man who believes that women and children first and then men must follow, get out, he's been happily existing in his Oxfordshire pile quite happily while he tells the rest of us to get out. So it's a strange way to make a living, Peter, isn't it, really? To be sort of either denigrating Britain, moaning, complaining, talking about the old days when there was a Bobby on the beat for 35, 40 years and doing nothing else but. I suppose it is a living though, isn't it? You know, I mean, it's got to be better than working, that's for sure. Now, there's something a little bit contentious about our third wacky-weight contender for the championship of today's world's headlines. I'm afraid it's Jordan Peterson again. Now, Jordan Peterson I normally put in the same bracket as Donald Trump. I mean, he's obviously going to be in the top 10 of any kind of access of whatever, you know, whether it be oddball, wacky, weird, idiot, or evil. So I don't normally include him. And he's now gone so strange that, you know, some people, not me, have sort of been having a bit of pity towards him. I don't feel that pity that other people feel. But if you are a Jordan Peterson fan, and that's fair enough, it might be a good idea to switch off now. I mean, a lot of people, I know a lot of young men in cells have said that they've read his book on the fact that they need to clean their room and it's changed their lives. So what can I say? He's probably got 25 million followers on social media, although there's nothing to follow at the moment because he's back in hospital and has been for some time. This is his second bout of hospitalisation. The first time he had this is my opinion, I'm not a medical doctor, but my opinion is on each occasion he's had a total breakdown. I think his first breakdown he blamed on the fact that he'd had a bad reaction to basically Valium or a benzodiazepine. Yeah, I don't believe that. And I'm not going to go into the medical reasons why I don't. But it's all very hazy and mysterious. Now, he's been in hospital again. I think this is another breakdown. This is my opinion. I have to say that these days. Otherwise, who knows what might happen. But I am actually entitled to my opinion. And I did check on ChatGPT whether or not I was still allowed opinion. And ChatGPT said, yes, you are allowed an opinion. I think he's had another breakdown, and this time his daughter has been on YouTube and says that it's because he was exposed to mould. Now, this is not the forum to go into Peterson's psychology. Jordan Peterson, the only man who actually breaks down in tears at his own genius, so-called, self-conceived, of course. He's not a genius. Far, far from it. But there you go. So, you know, the question is, should one be kind of a little bit sensitive towards him? Okay, let's cut to the chase. Oh, and by the way, I mean, the thing about Jordan Peterson is that he forces everybody who he speaks to qualify the words that they use. The classic example is, Jordan, do you believe in God? Well, it depends what you mean by believe. Well, you know, maybe they will then explain what they mean by believe and they will ask the question again. Well, okay, now we've established what I mean by believe. Do you believe in God, Jordan? Well, it depends what you mean by God. Now, the thing about this is that it's not particularly clever. It's semantics. Words are blunt instruments. They're not very sharp at communicating certain things. And therefore, if somebody demands that you qualify every single word in your sentence until you've kind of gone mad and he's gaslighted you, then it's nothing more than a cheap trick. Because without going into kind of semantic theory, we have to remember that words they're signals and symbols and signs for a common parlance, really, a common parlance, common ideas that have come about over centuries. So believe in God are things that you and I understand. We have a sort of cultural common ideas about these things, which is sufficient for a conversation, but not with Jordan Peterson. Anyway, I'm going on and on. I could see this is the problem, you get me onto people like Jordan Peterson and that's it. I'm just sort of finished. Everybody's bored by now, I suspect. All right, so why is Jordan Peterson today's contender? We've got Melania Trump. The bombers are coming. AI will be your tool. We've got Peter Hitchens and his "Anyone who can leave Britain must leave now" article. Jordan Peterson came up for some reason on a social feed, and it was a close-up of him. And I'm looking at this first thing in the morning. I haven't even had my coffee. It was a close-up of him, with the real intensity, with the tears. The little tears were coming down the face. How he cries at his own genius. There was a little layer of sweat over him. The eyes were kind of bulging. And this was a real clip. This wasn't AI generated, because I checked. And actually, he's done this very regularly, and he was doing it increasingly before he was hospitalised with his mould problem that's put him in hospital for 4 months. And he's reciting the Lord's Prayer. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done. Jordan Peterson, in my opinion, is a man who has willed madness upon himself. There, I've said it. So this is my first 5 minutes today. I felt like I'd been punched 3 times with the crazy, crazy boxing glove of modern life. And so I'm going to put those 3 in the ring for today's wacky-weight champions of the world. So who's going to win in that fight? Well, Melania clearly, in a way, she doesn't really exist, does she? She's kind of like an apparition. And so can we really say that she's kind of a wacky? Is she wacky? When she gets on stage in front of the military, tells them what the futures of your warfare will be. The whole incongruity of that. In fact, that must be probably one of the most incongruous things that's ever happened in the history of the world. That Melania Trump speech to that military corps. I mean, that's got to be right up there, hasn't it? But, she's got notes. She just goes on. She does it. She gets off. She's it's job, it's a work, it's a kind of functional role for her, sort of like the Queen of England or something, but in a kind of wacky, crazy way. So it's way up there. Peter Hitchens' article, anyone who can leave, basically, I think he's saying you've got 2 legs and enough money for a bus fare, basically. You've got to get out now. That's what he's saying. I didn't read the reasons. I think it's just basically to do with it's not a Christian country like it used to be in the 50s. There's no bobbies on the beat. Everybody's riding e-bikes. There's rubbish in the streets, that kind of thing. It was such a ridiculous headline. A call to arms. But of course, in every single Hitchens interview, half of it at least is him complaining that no one listens to him. I said this 10 years ago. I wrote about this 20 years ago. Nobody listens to me, and I'm right. So, anyway, it's pretty nutty, isn't it? And Peterson, well, it's a little bit unfair on Peterson because obviously he didn't, this was some old archive from maybe a year ago or something, because he hasn't been capable of doing any social media for quite some time now because of his illness to mould. And I'm feeling a bit generous towards him. It's not really a personal thing. It's just I did mention to a friend, and this friend of mine said something along the lines of, well, I feel a bit of pity for him. Who was it who said that? Okay, Jordan, you're not well. Let's let you off the hook. I think today the champion, the wacky-weight champion of the world this morning, and it's not even this morning, it's the first 5 minutes of this morning, has got to be Peter Hitchens.